Hey everybody. So I wanted to show some techniques from the new Clark Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Fundamentals course that he and I produced. We just released that course over at theartofskill.com. It's 5 hours long, 80 techniques that you must know in Jiu-Jitsu. These are the techniques that'll get you from white belt to blue belt, taught by one of the most skilled and accomplished members of the Gracie family. Check below for a coupon code if you're interested in purchasing the course. And again, it's available at theartofskill.com. So this first technique I wanted to show is a pendulum sweep, and it's a great example of using your legs to generate momentum in Jiu-Jitsu. One of the hallmarks of a more advanced practitioner in Jiu-Jitsu is their ability to use their legs. And we use our legs for all sorts of things, including generating momentum. And this is a perfect example of how you can use that momentum to take somebody from a top position and reverse them and put them on their back in a bottom position. Let's check it out.
Okay guys, we're going to look at this sweep that we are calling our academy breakdance. And I've been calling that since I was a teenager, but then I learned people start calling it as well. Pendulum sweep. So those are the two names that we usually reference this sweep. Although it's not to be confused with flower sweep. That actually looks very similar, but the energy of the sweep is very different. This is a very momentum force using sweep. So let's go with the elbow grip on this one to start. And this hand's gonna go just behind the knee. As I start pulling him in, I'll scoop that leg under. Now, as an option, you can grab the end of the pants here. Just be careful not to put your fingers inside. Okay, once I have those two hand positions, I can let my hips kind of open up and fly. So it's gonna feel like as if you wanna do an arm bar, as we swing our hips here, using this leg as a pendulum to open up, all right? Important here that my leg starts to slip right behind his armpit, and I keep that elbow close to me, okay? As my legs come out, I'm starting to get his shoulders tipping over me, and the more I get that going, that's the direction we're gonna go with this sweep, okay? Kind of making my partner do a full roll over this shoulder. We're gonna open this leg and then swing it back for more momentum as we tip him over using that leg and follow up to the mount position. Notice I like to use my head here to come up into the mount because I don't wanna have to let go of this arm if I can help it. So let's see again. Okay, so could be here, could also be here, but I feel like we have a little more drag from this grip if we're holding behind that tricep, okay? So I bring my hand inside, get that underhook. Sometimes you don't have to grab that grip, but if you can, I think it's gonna be helpful to have that grip for that last little lift that we're gonna do, okay? Remember, we're not pushing our partner completely sideways because I can get some resistance against that leg there. I wanna really rotate. Okay, so my hips are gonna be facing the direction I'm going. My heel is facing the direction I'm gonna be launching him. And I'm getting a good swing with this leg to create that momentum as I scissor my legs, finally lift this leg up and fall up to the top. Now, at this moment, I feel like I wanna let go and post my hand, but I'm gonna resist that urge and use my head to help me come up so that I never have to let go of his arm, okay? Sleeve grip, elbow grip, pull him in so you can get that underhook under the leg. Open up the leg, swing, swing, and take him over. Okay, he falls onto his shoulder, that's perfect. Following up to the mount. Optional, cross your legs as you land, just to have a little more security, and finally open it up as we settle in that top mount position.
This next technique is the Omoplata shoulder lock. Clark Gracie's signature technique. He's the best in the world at this. And there's a detail that I want you to pay attention to. I've always used the Omoplata as part of my game, but this detail really helped improve my finishing rate. And it has to do with the downward pressure that he applies with his leg to the opponent when he's setting up the Omoplata to keep that opponent from being able to roll out. So let's check it out.
All right, guys, looking at the simple Omoplata entry here from closed guard, we're going to get posture control first because this is going to be the root of all of his body weight, of his posture. I'm going to start coming under his hand and bring his hand to the floor as I pull him down and break his posture, which is why I had that hand in here in the first place. Making his hand go to the floor is an important detail. So if the hand was already there, you can skip that step. From here, we want to get my leg over his head, but from here, not very flexible, not very strong. So we're going to change angle. Hip escape. Now I'm on my side. Think about sandwiching his shoulder. Okay, so my knees are going to come both on top and bottom of his shoulder here. That hand that was pulling him in is now going to be pushing his head away as I eventually pass my leg all the way over his head. Okay, and I'm not going to get up until this leg comes over. This is a very important detail, and a lot of people skip that. So I like to focus on both hands. We'll be really maintaining that distance control until that leg comes over. Once you created that barrier, we have a lot more freedom to try different things, different directions here. But we also want to make sure this arm is nice and bent. So we're going to help it bend here, as we're also going to pinch this knee down, keeping his posture under control. Start coming up to your elbow. You can keep it on yourself on your side for the moment. Get body control so he doesn't roll out. Start squaring up your hips to the mat. So we're sitting very, very relaxed, very normally here with body control. I start to look for this hand under the arm usually and start to look for that lapel. If you can get it, that's ideal. Okay, we're gonna start to put our legs in position, but from here, we're not quite in good control of his posture. So it's really important that I scoot my hips behind this knee that is behind me. Okay, so we're gonna walk backwards. Okay, now that I have his knee way up here in front of me, I'm in good position and I should feel a lot more comfortable to start come forward. My knee is right above his shoulder, nice and lined up here. My shin is as parallel as it can be to the mat. My legs are uncrossed. I'm keeping my weight over him and using that back leg as it kind of winds up to project my body forward, bringing my head in the direction of his head to get that finish as my hips carry his hand up and behind his back. A common mistake here is people try to push the hand up by bridging like this and extending. But what happens here is he can start to extend his arm because it starts to get loose. So we want to keep that hand on this side where it started and smash it with our stomach between our hip and stomach here. And we're just going to keep it there. We're never going to open this again. We keep that smash as we keep this fold, or in other words, your shoulder and knee staying pretty close to each other. Chest and knee, and using that back leg to come forward for that finish. Okay, once you finish, make sure you don't get excited and stand up from here because you'll take your partner's shoulder with you. We're gonna sit back down, open up, and let's try the other side. So remember, we just need to get his hand to the floor above my leg and under my arm. If you have the underhook, it's not gonna be Omoplata territory. Let's keep it under your arm, framing it against the head until the leg gets all the way over. Make sure his elbow is bent. Start to come up to your elbow, body control, and only then do we move our hips out from under him completely. Getting a good hug around him so he doesn't do a forward roll. You're gonna start to position your legs, but recognize how high your knee is how that knee isn't exactly over the shoulder the way you'd like it to be, and how my shin is at a very 45-degree angle. So as I start to move backwards here, whether I just slide back or I load my weight on top of him first in order to walk back, sometimes loosening the elbow a little bit, but keeping visual. We keep the bend as much as possible. You see now my knee is right on top of his shoulder. My shin is much more flat towards the floor or parallel with the floor, like the way I want it. And his posture, in turn, is way more under control than where I was forward, okay, earlier on. So that's where a lot of people end up losing the omoplata, but now I have good control of his posture, and I can use this back leg to help put all my weight onto that front knee. His hand is tucked in, and it's gonna stay there as I start coming forward in this angled direction, 45-degree direction over his shoulder to get the finish, okay? Another common mistake here people do that I want you guys to do is over pushing across. We don't wanna go that way, and we don't wanna go straight forward either because we take all our weight off him. So find that middle ground here where we're kind of going in this direction, and you're gonna find that sweet spot where your partner's shoulder gets tight pretty quick and you can get the tap.
This next technique is a counter to the triangle choke. It's probably the most fundamental way to counter a triangle choke, which is to get posture. But what Clark Gracie does is a little different. He gets on his feet first and then drives forward and then elevates. He gets incredible elevation on that counter, and that's a little different than what I've seen before. So let's check it out.
All right, guys, I found myself in a triangle. Definitely not where I want to be, and always best is if you can avoid being here if possible. But if we are here, we're going to really focus on not letting this arm come across my body. So I'm going to bring my elbow to the outside, maybe even grabbing something here like this side lapel, or we're eventually going to make our way towards the belt, very cautiously, not letting him cross my arm. I'm going to come in this variation of escape to both hands on the belts, okay? If you didn't have the belt, you're going to be just under the ribs, for example, on a no-gi version of this escape. But we're gonna have these two grips. Now, as I keep my elbow and my knee together, I'm gonna come to stand up, okay? But keeping a nice tight ball position as I kind of keep myself crunched over here. And now I'm gonna do a very explosive movement, which is gonna press down on the belt, bring my knees towards the floor, chest forward, hips forward, and head to the sky, okay? Even if his legs doesn't open immediately, I'm gonna try to bring my elbow inside and go into a much safer pass, which here we're in double unders where it's much harder for him to work into his triangle. Let's look again on the other side. So we're here, we don't want to let this arm come across, so we're keeping this one nice and tucked open. He's probably going to be trying to pull this arm across, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe hold this lapel at first until I'm able to pass off to the belt, if I'm not there yet. Both hands to the belt, we're going to come to a standing position without lifting our hips too high, okay? So we're not gonna be looking down like this. We're just gonna come into elbows and knees are still together. As I press down, my knees are coming forward and down, my hips coming forward, and my head and chest coming high, okay? As soon as I can, I start to bring the elbow back inside, sneak my hand back into a safe position, bring my hands together for gable grip, nice and low on the hips, where I'm now safe from the triangle, and able to potentially start passing his guard with my double underpass.
This next technique is an armbar from S-mount, classic technique, but here too, there are details in the way that Clark Gracie sets it up, which makes it devastatingly effective. Pay attention to what he does with his opponent's head. He pulls the head in, turns it away, and applies a lot of pressure there to hold the position before stepping over to the armbar. Let's check it out.
Okay, I also want to show you guys an S mount armbar, which is very important and a little bit more advanced, but a very productive armbar here. Okay, very productive mount. So here he has a lot of options to escape, but what I'm going to do is slide my knee all the way up. I'm going to bring my chest around that elbow with my chest, or sometimes just tuck and use that angle to push his tricep. What I like to do at this point is come around the head and pull the head towards my knee as I press forward on his tricep. Okay, bringing my knee all the way to the top of the head, then coming under his elbow, making sure this arm is controlled so he's not able to start pushing my foot into his half guard. As I keep this arm here, I'll lean back in order to wrap nice and high into his armpit. My hamstring here should be against his sternum, high on his chest, shifting my weight into his sternum and posting up on my back foot. So you look at a 3-point check mark here. We're gonna put the heel pointed towards his head or his ear, the knee on the top of his head, and these back toes are up, putting my weight in the correct position, making it hard for him to bridge and also for him to do his hip escapes, okay? So here we have quite a few options to attack, but the armbar is the most obvious one, right? So what I like to do is put his hand in the bend of my elbow. So I'm not holding his wrist, but I'm wrapping it like this, keeping it nice and connected to my body as I lean my weight into my right side, maybe putting the hand on the floor if you like your partner, take a little weight off of him as you step over and falling back, finishing the same way as before, heels in, knees tight, maybe crossing your legs if you like, and finishing nice and tight here. Okay. Once again, hand on the top of the shoulder, so as I come up into a higher mount, he's not able to slide up. My knee will bump his elbow in as my chest comes around. That's perfect if it works out that way. Otherwise, give it a little push and chest comes over. Immediately come to the top side of his head and pull it in as I press forward, bring my knee up a little bit higher, all the way to the top of the head. So as we come around this elbow and wrap, we should find our angle to be very perpendicular to him here, okay? So seeing that everything's in order, back toes are up, knees on the top of his head, and my heel is pointing towards the side of his head or his ear here. I'm gonna start to wrap this arm, hugging it to my chest, lean against this side of his hip, not this side here, okay? Because we don't wanna fall back too soon. We wanna be, if anything, leaning more forward as we step over. Okay, a common mistake here is people sit down and then pass the leg over. We don't want to give him any opportunity to get up and get out of this armbar. So we're putting that leg in front of his face before anything else to make sure that he doesn't follow me as I go down. I make sure he stays right where he is, right? Focusing on the wrist now, knees tight, and getting that finish here.
The next technique I want to show is a clock choke. Classic finish when your opponent is turtled up. Clark Gracie has a detail that he uses where he jumps his leg over the shoulder before he begins tightening the clock. A little different than what you see people do, but it's devastatingly effective, and that movement prevents one of the primary ways that people can escape that choke. Let's check it out.
All right, guys, we find ourselves in this top turtle position. We want to get good control and make sure he's not gonna slip away from this position. So having a hand under the arm, the far side hand under the arm, and holding that lapel or seatbelt is always a good idea to keep a good control. Okay, in this case, I'm gonna hold the lapel here to stay a nice, good control. Before I put the choke in, there's a few precautions I want to make. I don't want to go too deep with this one. I don't want to grab the far side, and it's mainly because I don't want him to grab over my elbow and potentially roll me over. So because of that, I'm gonna make my grip, but then I'm gonna pull my elbow out. So when he goes to grab my arm and trap it, all he can get really is my hand, maybe just above my wrist, but not anything higher than my elbow, okay? So I'm gonna keep that one nice and shallow so I don't get rolled over until I'm ready to really commit and pass off that lapel. Once I pass it off, I'm getting that grip. And if you can get deep, it's always good, but it really is not super important for you to get extremely deep on this choke because we're gonna make up for the slack later, okay? Once I pass it off, the other hand now is gonna go to the other side lapel and make that grip. So at that point, I'm really committing that left arm, and I know he could grab it and potentially roll me over if he wanted to. That being said, I don't wanna stay here too long for him to be able to potentially roll me over. So my hip bone that's nice and heavy on his hip right now is gonna come right up here above his shoulder in the corner of his neck and his shoulder right here. All right, so I'm gonna take a quick hop over and put that weight of the sprawl and my hip into that upper shoulder position, okay? I'm gonna keep looking forward like I'm looking towards my foot. I don't look inward towards his feet, okay? That's really important in case he tries to roll me over. I could hurt my neck if I'm looking this way. So I keep looking forward, okay? I stay in that sprawl position and I'm just gonna take little steps, tiptoeing around like a clock until that choke gets nice and tight and we get the tap, all right? And that's where we're gonna be making up for all the slack that we may find in the grip of the choking hand, okay? Something that's really important to me that I discovered as well many years ago when doing this choke is that I keep the top leg always in front, all right? And the reason for that is because my hips will be always facing down. And if my hips are facing down, then my forehead can easily find the mat, okay? If I bring that bottom leg in front, my hips are facing up, and if he tries to roll me over, I'm gonna be looking at the ceiling, and I can't really use my head to post and stop the roll. So we're gonna compare that to when my top leg is in front, my hips that therefore are facing downwards, my forehead can easily find the mat after I get to this position. If he tries to roll me over to the side, my forehead is on the mat and I find this tripod position and I'm able to continue in a tripod position with the choke without getting rolled over and continue to get that finish. So once again, we're in this position, we get that lapel, pull it nice and shallow, okay? Keep your weight on your partner. Go ahead and transfer that grip, feed that grip when you're ready and get that opposite side. Don't stay here too long. You want to immediately jump over that shoulder and you'll feel this hump right here on your hip bone. So when your hip is right here, he can roll me over. But once I get to the opposite side of his shoulder, the top side of his shoulder, then we are safe from getting rolled as long as we keep this leg in front. Even if as you're walking up, don't switch your legs like this, okay? We're gonna shuffle step like this, always keeping that top leg in front, and we can continue with the finish. We don't need to put our head on the floor unless he tries to roll us over. If that were to happen, which is not uncommon, we can post with our head and continue walking in the same way we have been doing this whole time to get the finish. All right, guys, let's give it a try.
The last technique I wanted to show is called Kata guruma. It's a judo throw, also known as the fireman's carry in wrestling. And I wanted to show it because Clark's execution is so beautiful. It's worth watching it just to see how amazing he's able to set up and execute this throw.
All right, guys, this throw is called Kata guruma. Very beautiful throw, also known as fireman's carry. There's a few variations we can practice one, but I'm going to show my favorite, which is kind of a baseball slide for your footwork, okay? So what I'm going to do is holding the elbow. I'm going to enter, like I want to do a high crotch double leg, or high silico, okay? But we're gonna switch as I shoot this one through, my shoulder through, pulling this one down. I'm gonna sit through and take his weight over, okay? Very important here, I bring my head to his chest as I turn in towards his legs and finish here in side control. Great timing to use this one is kind of similar to a tomonagi, where maybe I'm snapping him down, he comes up, and I take him at that moment. Or great to use against someone who is trying to push you backwards. So as maybe I push him, he pushes me back, and that's a great time to get on the inside and do this throw. Don't leave your head on the floor. You're gonna end up in an uncomfortable neck position, and he could probably get up. Okay, so we're gonna let the head slip to the chest as soon as he lands. We're keeping this elbow as long as possible, and we're also being very aware of, as we come up, his guard recovery. So it's not a bad idea to consider bringing this hand to the floor, so when he goes to put his guard back in place, I'm blocking and closing the distance as I settle into the side control. Okay, so whatever your setup may be, the function is pretty much the same here. We're holding this elbow, we're gonna pull it down heavy as we drive through his hips with our shoulder, sit through, and finish here. Bring the head to the chest, and coming to the top, letting go of the elbow at the very end. Also, like tomonagi, we want to keep everything kind of flowing on that one side. In this case, it's all gonna be on my left side, on his right side. Okay, so the arm that is extended, the arm that I'm grabbing, is the arm that he will be rolling over on the shoulder. If he looks the opposite direction, there's a chance he might hurt his neck. So it's good as we practice this one to be aware of that and consider everything rolling on this side for your partner especially, because he's gonna be taking the throw, okay? Also, make sure there's nobody behind you when you do this throw, okay? All right, so as I hold this one here, I step in with my right hand comes under, shoulder hits the body. Right about here, this leg's gonna act like it's gonna slide into base for our baseball players here. Here, and he's gonna dive over as I pull down on this elbow. Head comes up to the chest and finish in side control. All right, guys, let's try your Kata guruma.